Well, hello and welcome to another wild and woolly week on Waffle-Free Storytelling. So, as always, the waffle is in the show notes, which lets us jump right into this week's story, which is called Dusani and the Barn. Now, people called Dusani by all sorts of names. Opinionated, bullish, impossible, pushy were just some of the words they used when they talked about him. And talked about him they did. Dusani, they'd say. What's he trying to change now? Be satisfied with things the way they are. Now, Dusani heard the talk, but he ignored it. Or he didn't so much ignore it, he just let it wash right over him. Because to him, it didn't really matter what people said. He knew in his core that he was right. Because here's the thing. Dusani didn't see the world as complete. If he looked at a windmill and he thought it could be better, he would break it down, pull it apart, and rebuild it, whether anyone wanted him to or not. He did the same with roofs and gardens and tools. He even tried it with people. For him, if something needed to change, it had to change. Because without that, there would be no progress. And without progress, well, nothing would get done. His parents watched him fight and battle with the village, and they said, on more than one occasion, I have to tell you, sometimes the thing you want to change isn't the only thing that needs to change, Dusani. But Dusani didn't hear that. He couldn't help seeing the world in parts that could be reassembled, rebuilt, and improved. So, as you would expect, the older Dusani got, the bigger the things he tried to change got. Where he started with tools and vegetable patches, he soon progressed to machines and farms, and finally, after he tried to rebuild, fix, and change the bricks around people while they slept, the village got tired of him and told him that if he really wanted to do something useful, he must go and fix old lady Kobo's run-down farm. Now, old lady Kobo was at least 204, people thought. She had lived on that farm for as long as anyone could remember. The older she got, the more she kept to herself, which means that by the time Dusani approached her farm, the old woman was never seen. As a result, her farm had run wild. Things grew only because nature seemed to be in charge, which means the barn, the fences, the roofs, the paths were all ramshackled and overgrown. Nervous as he was about taking on old lady Kobo, Dusani was excited. If he was lucky, she would stay inside like she always did and just let him get on with his thing. She should be grateful, is what he said to himself the day he ventured onto her property. She should be grateful that someone is taking charge of her stuff. On that first day, Dusani decided to tackle the barn. He pulled it down, he cleared it out, he rebuilt it, and he fixed it. By the end of the day, the heap of discarded metal and wood was taller than Dusani himself. Happy with his work and sure old lady Kobo would appreciate his intervention, he went home. The next day, he returned with a plan to break down all the fences around the farm, but to his alarm, he saw that all of his good work had been undone. The barn was back as it was, ramshackle and rusted, torn up and broken, standing there like a sore tooth against the sky. Dusani was furious, But he was not going to be defeated. So again, he spent the day on the barn, fixing, changing, tearing down, tearing apart, and rebuilding. When he left the farm, he turned to old Lady Kobo's house and he shouted, "Do not undo my work. This is what is good for you." Then he went home. Dusani got up exceedingly early the next morning, and he made his way to old Lady Kobo's farm. But again, the barn was exactly as it had been before he started. Dusani threw down his tools. He stamped and he thrashed. He shouted and he cursed and he yelled at old Lady Kobo. "Anyone who doesn't like change is ignorant and unwashed." Well, this was the biggest insult Dusani could think of, and he meant it. He yelled so loud that the front door to old Lady Kobo's house swung open. This made Dusani pause. No one had seen the old lady in years. What if she was dead? What if she was mad? What if she was evil? But what if, Dusani thought, the inside of her house needed to be fixed and changed and sorted? With a glimmer of hope, Dusani edged his way up the mottled path to the old woman's front door. He tested the steps. Solid enough. He studied the patio. Strong and stable. He pushed the door. No creaks there either. And so he stepped inside. "Come on in, Dusani," a voice said from somewhere deep in the cottage. The voice was loud and strong. It was not the voice of someone 204 years old. More confusing, where Dusani expected a sparse, dusty, broken house, he saw instead a wide, hot, crackling fire in the fireplace, books lining every wall, 2 fat cats sleeping on a windowsill, and a manuscript spread across the kitchen table littered with inkpots and pens. The floors were wood and polished, the rugs were warm and bright, there was music coming from somewhere upstairs, and the kettle was bubbling on the stove. The place looked easily 10 times bigger inside than it looked like it should be from the outside. "Hello, Dusani," the old woman said. Dusani stared at old Lady Kobo. She was tall and lean, had rich dark skin with thick grey hair piled high on her head. Her eyes shone as she smiled at him and sat him into a chair. "So, Dusani," she said, "what did you change today?" Dusani stumbled on his words and sort of told old Lady Kobo about the barn and how he had tried to change it. Old Lady Kobo listened carefully. Then when Dusani was quite finished, she said, "Did the barn want to change?" At that point, Dusani was positive that the old woman was mad. Who cares whether the barn wanted to change? It was a barn. Old Lady Kobo filled 2 mugs with something delicious, handed one to Dusani, and walked out the back door of the cottage towards the barn. Dusani followed, not because he wanted to, but because, well, it felt like he didn't really have a choice. When they got to the barn, old Lady Kobo leaned against an oak tree that grew next to it. "Look at the barn," she said. "Look at every part of it. What do you see?" Dusani sat on a rock and studied the ramshackle, dilapidated building. "It's just a broken building that needs to be rebuilt," he muttered. Old Lady Kobo nodded. "Look again." And so Dusani did. The door creaked open as a rabbit hopped out, followed by a duck with 6 ducklings. Through the half-open door, Dusani saw rainwater dripping from a hole in the roof into a bucket where tadpoles were just turning into frogs. Grass grew through the split boards that made up the walls, building roads and paths for ants and beetles and bugs. A gap in the boards was just big enough for a hedgehog to scuttle through. Dusani sat back and stared at the life moving in and out of the building. "This isn't a barn," he said. His eyes grew wide as old Lady Kobo laughed. "Really?" she said. "Then what is it?" Dusani frowned and thought. "I have no idea." Old Lady Kobo hugged her mug as a sparrow darted through a gap in the eaves. "If it's not a barn," she said, "what needs to change?" Dusani shook his head and put a broad oak leaf over a snail to shade it from the sun. "Me," he said. "Just me." Well, that's it from the Waffle-Free Storytelling podcast for today. Make today better than yesterday, next week better than last week. Just have a beautiful time of it. And the waffle is down in the show notes. Drop around to www.tinakonstant.com for all the other waffle and also the fireside. Fill in the form and join the Waffle-Free Storytelling Fireside. It'll be good to see you there. So that's it. Have a splendid time and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye now. Biscuits later, Jack.